Welcome to Yes Also. I'm Susie Barrett. My guest today is the popular LA improv team Convoy, which is made up of Fernie, Berg, and Todd Fasen. Convoy came up during a time sort of before indie teams, before there was an indie scene in LA. They started out as a cage match team and ended up going on winning streaks at IO West and also UCB. They were eventually given their own show at UCB, and post-COVID, they started doing a show in town at the Yard Theater on Melrose. They share some funny stories from inside the process of trying to sell and develop TV shows, which I found very entertaining, and they have some really lovely advice for younger improvisers. And I should also say that we had to do this interview over Zoom, so everyone was using different microphones and different setups, so apologies for the wonky audio. After you listen, make sure you head over to Instagram at YesAlsoPod to see some photos of them, even from back in college when they met. And if you like the show, why not give us a review, a like, a follow, a subscribe, whatever the kids are doing these days. All right, here's Convoy. Can we just go around and each of you introduce yourself so people know what your voice sounds like and then how to judge you when you're speaking?
I'm Fernie. That's how I sound all the time.
I'm Todd Fasen. This is my voice.
This is Berg. I am eager for your judgment.
Oh, bad take.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I need these notes. I need the feedback.
Macro view of Convoy. How long have you guys been performing as Convoy? Talk about the form that you do, and then I want to reverse after that and talk about your origin story, how you all met. But yeah, what's the macro?
Convoy grew out of a group called Allergic to Todd, which we were in, and then the fourth guy died. And so in February of 2005, am I getting the timeline right? We revamped as Convoy because we had gone on a road trip and found the novelty song just oh so ticklish. And
by road trip, we went to Santa Barbara. So I think road trip is being it's generous.
Depends on where you started from. Was this New York?
No.
Okay, LA.
Okay.
We're coming from LA.
That's a little mini road trip.
It's a mini road trip.
Why Allergic to Todd?
I think it was just a funny name. And then at the starts of our IO cage match shows, we'd come out and be like, hi, we're allergic to Todd. That's Todd. We'd do a show.
Didn't you do a thing in like a one-off in New York where you were allergic to Brett or something like that?
Like that.
Yeah,
and then I think
there was something like there was already allergic to was already like a name meme at that time.
And then I think when the dead guy signed us up for the cage match, I think he wrote in allergic to Todd.
Yeah, I think that might be right.
Gotcha. So you guys are coming up on a 20-year anniversary.
Yeah.
Have you been doing the same style show the whole time? You do like a slacker, right?
Similar, yeah. Like when we started, we knew kind of like when we started, we were like, yeah, we want to play fast and we like doing tag outs. But we'd started out doing like sort of like an old school original slacker where there's like no edits. Everything's like organic from one scene to the next. Follow the lever sort of thing. Or I throw a paper airplane and we follow the airplane and it lands at someone's feet. Hey, there's your scene. And like that's what we started doing. And then kind of within a month we were like, this is hard. I don't want to do this anymore. And so then we started like kind of like figuring out like, well, what do we like about it and paring it down. And I'd say about a year after we started kind of performing regularly, we had pretty much what we do now. Like, it's changed just as we've changed, but like at its core, we kind of had that.
Early on, I think we might have occasionally edited, like swiped, and then at a certain point, but it would be like maybe once or twice a show, and at a certain point we're like, we should just not edit. Yeah,
I remember having a conversation at some point, and this might have even been like an Allergic to Todd era, like pre-Convoy, but I remember having a conversation where like, after a show, we're all kind of talking about it. We're like, I think that our best shows have the fewest edits or no edits. And then we're just like, okay, well, that's the one rule is no wipe edits. Just deal with what you got and keep pushing forward.
Got it. And do you find that challenging yourselves to adhere to that and force like more and more tags, do you find that made your tagging games better, or your ability to find a new shiny object in any scene because you were forced to do it?
It probably did. I think our instincts were already there. Like my I think all three of our instincts are, he just said something funny, I want to go explore that. And less like, hey, let's end this and start again. But I think where, it kind of like encouraged us to kind of like to really get good at that. But it was already a little bit where our instincts were, and like, very much that those wipe edits which are always kind of like dead space in a show, and then you build it back up and stuff. Removing that kind of becomes a little bit of a sleight of hand trick where, it makes it seem like we're going faster even maybe than we are, because you don't have these moments where like, hey, we're clapping because someone ran across the stage and the energy is at 0 now and we have to build it back up. The energy always spills over from the previous scene. So we are in charge of, okay, it's funny to bring the energy way down now. That's a choice instead of I wiped, so we have to. And I think we got good at kind of reading what does that next scene need energy-wise.
One thing I remember also talking about, like, this might have been like a year in or give or take, but like I remember talking about also like having those sort of like bridge scenes, because it's, where you're like playing one game, but then it's like, oh, we're just going to like follow this character that showed up at the end of the game on some like random detail they might have said, but then we're basically resetting and starting a new game by taking that character someplace else.
Something.
Yeah, I think too, like, oh, sorry, Susan.
No, go for it.
Oh, I was going to say, like, part of it too is the context in which we were doing these shows very early on. Yeah. The first couple of years is like, we were doing Heralds at I.O. and, game was not really an organizing principle for scenes at I.O. They were really focused on like truthfulness and truthful responses, at least when we were there. I'm sure it's changed. But in Heralds, I would get very frustrated because there wasn't a game to carry forward to the next scene. It felt like you were always wiping because there's so many scenes, and then always, like Fernie said, like kind of really having to pick back up from scratch.
Right.
And I think I think every improv student has to have their like ritualistic denouncement of the Herald, and then every improv teacher has to have their moment of like, actually, it's great, hear me out, like. But I think for us too, part of it was like, well, we're very frustrated with doing Heralds. The structure feels too rigid, and being able to just have these like kind of faster tags felt like, well, now we can have our outlet. We're doing this. The Heralds became like kind of the academic exercise, and this almost became blowing off steam in an improvisational way, I guess.
And I would say I don't mind, like at I.O. West at that time, like you did a Herald the way they told you. Sometimes you had to do a bridge scene between the two teams. There was someone playing piano with you, whether you wanted them to or not. He's a very nice man, but I did not want him to do that. And like
shout
that
out
was
Andrew Melton.
Andrew Melton.
Yes. Not his fault. Not his fault.
He's a wonderful man.
Yeah. Yes, wonderful man. Yes.
But like that, I think also was part of it too, of being like, it wasn't even the Herald, as being like, wait, hold on, we could make the Herald our own, but we're not being allowed to. Yeah. And so then this other thing became like, well, this is what we like to do, and on our own we want to do, and we're going to go do it upstairs in the tiny little black box theater up there for 3 people for a number of months doing this cage match with nobody in the audience. And like that became more of us kind of like sharpening our edges as to what our instincts were.
I think the other kind of organizing principle too, in some ways, was like Convoy essentially started as a cage match team, so we have that 20-minute time limit. So I think our instincts were already there, but I think also knowing that we had 20 minutes, I think that pushed us to sort of play fast, combined with the fact that we were a 3-person team. So there's only one person on the back line. So I think like no one's waiting for someone else to tag in. So I think that also led us to speed up, because it's just like, I got to get in. I got to keep things moving. And we all had that instinct to do that.
Yeah, gotcha. What was your cage match run like at I.O.? I know you had a big run at UCB.
Oh, gosh. I don't know. We did it for a
Didn't we stop at 20?
Yeah, I think they made you retire at 20.
Yeah, that's right.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, it was, the cage matches are very different now than they were back in my day. Like But the indie improv scene is so robust now, and has been for a long time. At that point, it was not. There certainly were indie improv shows, but like it was the stereotypical like, well, it's a bunch of white 20-year-old dudes, and then like one like really too supportive roommate or girlfriend who had to come along, and we're all just kind of performing for each other. The cage matches kind of were the indie scene, and so sometimes that meant like, well, it's student teams like kind of we were in the early days, and sometimes it meant like, I don't know, Brendan Hunt and Colton Dunn were hanging out in the bar and the other team forgot to show up, so they're going to come do 20 minutes now, so it was very I feel like certainly post Heather and Miles, the cage match really became like kind of its own thing. At that point, it wasn't, though. It was just a sparsely attended show, and if you could bring enough friends, you could go up again next week.
Also, I feel like the UCB cage match was a little bit bigger too, even when we started doing it. Like the IO cage match was definitely, it's like mostly it was like people's friends that were in the audience.
Yeah. And that too supportive girlfriend.
Yes. Because I think also by
you
the
don't
time
have
we
to support him doing this. He can just go out on his own.
Yeah, be less supportive.
By the time we started to do the UCB cage match, I think we'd like stopped getting our friends to come because like, we made them do this for IO. So when we did UCB, I think it was really just like the crowds that had already been coming there were on board with us. So we weren't stacking the house anymore.
Yeah, gotcha. Big difference. And IO in general in those days was tougher, or like it was just tougher to get a crowd at that.
Yeah.
at that theater. I'm laughing at Fernie's impression of Berg holding his hands on his chest.
I can't. Gigi is sitting in my lap in such a way that I don't have anywhere good to put my hands.
Gigi is your cleaning lady?
Yeah. Gigi, this little lumpus of a dog in my lap.
What a lumpus. Let's reverse the convoy. I want to talk about how the three of you met. You all met in college at Vassar, right? None of you knew each other going into school?
No.
All right, walk me through the meetings. Who met who first, and how soon after you guys met did you A, become friends, and B, decide to start improvising?
Me and Berg probably would have met first because Berg and Fernie are a year below me, but me and Berg got onto the improv group at Vassar, I guess the beginning of Berg's freshman year and beginning of my sophomore year. And then I probably interacted with Fernie maybe at some point during that year briefly, but then Fernie got on the improv group the following year.
No, I think that year didn't you direct a one act that I was in?
Oh, were you in a one act I directed? Well, then I met Fernie in that one act. Was it with Ellie?
I think yeah, with Ellie. That's how I met Ellie too. So I guess that would have been the next year, but that would have been when we met, was when we did that, and then that same year I got on that improv group as well. But I think I'd also bought weed from Berg before then.
Yeah, because I think you knew. I think like Joe knew Matt Miller from high school or something, and so you came up to Jewett one night. And I think I was probably, blackout drunk or who knows what.
Jewett is a dorm for those listening that don't know Vassar locations.
Including me. Yeah, I was really curious. The Phallus Palace. How charming.
It's shaped like a big dick and balls.
Oh, good. And so Fernie, you hadn't auditioned for the improv group, or you did?
No,
audition?
I auditioned. I didn't get in freshman year. And I got in the next year, and that's when kind of like we all met. But then so we all started doing shows together, short form improv and stuff.
Also, Berg wouldn't hang out with us all freshman year, like because everyone on the group kind of knew each other, and Berg was like the person no one really knew that got in, and then Berg wouldn't hang out with us at all.
Yeah, the guy who was president at the time, like very early on, was like, "You should come party," and I went and partied, and he like. Kept asking me if I wanted cocaine, and I was like, "This is not my vibe." And so I just kind of assumed that was like the whole troop's vibe. Yeah, which is so funny knowing everyone now. But I was just like, no, I'm good.
Fernie, who has not even had a drop of alcohol in his life, and you're like, I'm not hanging out with that cokehead.
Yeah, pushing the coke on everybody.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but Berg, this was like the phase where didn't you have like a long goatee that you would stick a pencil through and you'd show up to class barefoot?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
He'd show up everywhere
Very different vibe.
Very different vibe, yeah. I mean, I'm barefoot now, but yeah, I would go to all my classes barefoot. I was the Hawaiian shirt guy.
Oh,
I would
fun.
wear Hawaiian shirts all the time.
Yeah, you're a very fun person then.
And the cargo short guy, but not camo yet.
Not
They were
camo
just
yet.
cargo shorts.
I didn't discover the camos until senior year, but yeah.
I feel like the Hawaiian shirt guy circa Y2K is a different vibe than the 2024 Hawaiian shirt guy.
Yeah, now it's like
it is
a Kiwi Farms, like, ugh.
Yeah,
Jimmy
at
Buffett
the, at the
fan.
time it definitely read like new metal, right?
Yes,
Like
yes.
that was the visual motif.
Yes, for sure.
Long hair, short hair, what was going on top?
Short hair freshman and sophomore year, but then I dropped out for a semester and grew my hair way out. So then I had, like, for junior year, most of the year I had hair down to my shoulders, which was seeing pictures now is really disorienting. It's
Also
not
Also a different vibe.
Also
Lots of
some
vibes going on with Berg in the early 2000s.
Also, he dropped a bunch of weight too. So when he came back, it was like these like long, luscious locks and like rail thin.
Calm down, Todd. He's taken.
And Berg's thing in college improv was rhyming short form games,
Yes.
right? That Berg did agree. Like if there's like a rhyming game, Berg is very good at riffing and improvising in rhyme, like remarkably so. Certainly back then when in practice, and like that was his thing, right?
That's-
I think
Yeah,
Yeah,
he did
that
rhyming
was-
couplets.
Yeah, we would do it like twice a semester, and it was always like me, and then like, you know, like there'd be like sometimes it'd be Caleb. I feel like sometimes it'd be Fernie, but like it was always like, now we're gonna do rhyming couplets.
Caleb was a guy in our group who did a lot of Shakespeare, so he's perfect for rhyming couplets.
Yeah.
I was going to ask if you've ever done improvised Shakespeare, Berg. I didn't know you were a rhyme guy. It doesn't surprise me though.
No, I'm like I come at rhymes from like Dr. Seuss.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't know Shakespeare for shit.
Got it.
So
Save
angry.
it for the bumper sticker.
Yeah. Drum machines have no soul.
So the three of you are now embedded in a short form troupe. Do any of you? I happen to really love short form in addition to long form for different reasons. But do any of you still have an affinity for short form, or was it kind of like?
There's like some short form that I fully legitimately miss. That would be so like line games, like where you like. I love that sort of stuff.
I
I
love
think
line
that's
games.
super fun.
I loved any kind of like a guessing game, like Return It to
Yes.
the Store or
I
Interrogation.
enjoyed a guessing game.
Yeah.
I don't know. Return it to the store. How do you play that?
It's real complicated. I'm
Susie,
returning something.
You're never gonna follow along.
Yeah, I'll try to slow it down so you can understand, Susie. You run a store, and I'm returning something to you.
Hold on. Can you start again?
Yes, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, sorry, we're rushing.
And I forget one of us doesn't know what it is, and the other one has to get that person to guess. So I think the returner doesn't know what it is,
Yeah,
right?
I think the returner leaves the room, and then the store owner gets an item from the audience.
Gotcha.
And the returner comes back in, and the whole time, like, you know, every time the store owner's like, it's a lot fuzzier than that, the audience is like,
Right.
it's so fun. It's so fun.
But that stuff is so funny where it's like, people are like, is there a mirror hanging behind the thing? Like, how do you know what the clues are? It's like, because they gave a clue and we put it together.
It's like, there's like 90% of like when people are trying to figure out what the trick is of like some sort of improv thing, and like they can't accept that like the trick is we listened to what the other person said.
Right.
Full stop. Like
Right.
it's just literally you listen to what other human beings express to you through body language and words, and you go, "Oh, I'm synthesizing that, and I'm coming up with a like that's long and short form. That's the magic trick." And for some people, they're just like impossible. They have to have it written down.
That's a great point that is the same secret sauce for short form and long form. Be present, stay focused, listen, integrate the info, and then respond accordingly.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'll say this about short form, because I feel like short form gets a real bad rap in the long form improv community, because when done poorly, short form can come off as really like hokey and gimmicky. But long form done poorly is just as hokey and just as gimmicky. Like it's not because it's short or long form. You just don't like hokey stuff. That's
I would
right.
say long form done poorly can often just be boring. At least short form done poorly. At least it's quick and it's like, oh, okay, I'm groaning at this joke.
Right. Yeah. And at least there's some sort of framework that you can follow along with. It's like, all right, I'm going to see each person use the get that they got, or I'm going to watch this like alphabet play out, and I know it ends at Z. But with long form, there's no end in sight and no framework with which to
you might be trapped forever in that black box theater. You might never be allowed to leave.
I have felt that feeling before, on stage and off. Really quick before we move on from short form, do you have a favorite line game that you guys played?
We used to 187s.
Oh,
we just did World's Worst and 187s. I think those were the two.
We had some others. I just can't remember what they were, but those were our two big ones. And World's Worst was always so fun because there's like a number of ways you could take it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like it really was like you go, okay, that became about, can I misdirect someone? And that is like a fun joke writing exercise in your head of being like, we've done 3 that are straightforward. How can I get to C without going through B? And that will get the laugh.
And World's Worst is really just like a baby game machine. You are just one half of a game. You're assuming there's a base reality where everyone else is at this funeral or at this wedding or whatever. And then the fun becomes, how can I be the unusual person? Is it incorrect emotion? Is it what I'm saying, what I'm doing, what I'm wearing? Yeah. So you guys, did you decide to leave college together? Todd, were you ahead of them? Did you leave for LA first?
Yeah, I mean, I'm from LA, so I just kind of came back here, and then some friends of mine from college were coming out here that already lived here, and also our friend Matt, who was the guy in Allergic to Todd who passed away, he was coming out here too. He was my year, and he was in the short form troupe with us. So he initially was doing improv out here at Ultimate Improv, and then I took classes there afterwards. And then when he started taking classes at IO, and then I started taking classes at IO because he was doing it. And he told me, he was like, you can skip level 1, just go in and lie and say you took 101 at UCB in New York, which is what I did. And then when UCB opened, I think I lied to them and said I took 101. So I've never taken an Improv 101 class at any improv.
Scandal. Oh my God, your students are going to ask for their money back.
Didn't Berg try to do that?
That same dead friend convinced Berg and I to move to LA. We weren't planning on it, and then like in the same night, I think convinced both of us. Like, you should move out. We'll do sketch and comedy and stuff.
And then he went. Okay, yeah. And then he died? What a dick.
He almost immediately died, which really feels rude.
Honestly, hilarious timing, all things considered.
Like 6 months, 5 months after you moved out here?
4 months after we got here, 2 weeks before his wedding. The man's sense of comedic timing was impeccable.
It's a pretty great World's Worst.
But in a similar, we he did the same thing to us where he's like, you can just say that you took 101 in UCB. And we're like, okay. So Berg and I walked to iOS from our shitty apartment to go sign up for our first 101 class. And we stand in this line, so you have to do it in person. And we walk up, and Ashley Canese, who we became friends with, to sign people up. And we're like, hi, we want to sign up for improv classes. And she's like, oh, great. Have you done 101? She straight up asks us. And Berg panics and just goes, no. Just couldn't tell the lie. He just couldn't do it. And I was like, and I was like, well, I don't want to jump ahead to 201. I want to take this class with Berg. So I was like, yeah, me neither. And then we were out several $100s and got to take
you should have bailed on him.
You're out several $100s, but you get to have the priceless knowledge that you have good character. And Todd is bankrupt in that department.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah. So the two Alexes are in classes at IO. Todd is zooming through programs by virtue of lying. Is this when you all started doing cage matches, or how did you reformulate?
Yeah, when Berg and I moved out here, we got here in August of 04. And I think we did our first cage match with Todd and Matt in September of 04. Again, there just were fewer people around, and Matt, knowing that we had come out, had gone to the physical sign-up sheet and signed us up.
And so we started. Oh, sorry.
Go for it.
No. We were doing the student cage match too, which was upstairs in the black box. And the whole thing with the student cage match was, I think whoever won upstairs, the last Thursday of the month, then went downstairs to compete in the main stage cage match. And so
like immediately, right? Like it was like you walked
Like,
downstage.
yeah, like later that
you
night,
walked downstairs. And this one team called Cup of Tea had been winning for a while, which has like Ann Gregory on it.
They were
and
great.
Charlotte Newhouse, and they were really funny. And so I think our first night we went down and played them and lost. So then we were, I guess, kind of made it our goal that we wanted to win the main stage cage match and kept trying to do that.
So we did that for a while until Matt died. Then we took a few months off.
I believe also we beat them and we became the main stage cage match champions, did one more cage match, and then Matt died.
Yeah, Matt definitely
really?
died. Yeah, Matt died on whatever night the cage match was. Matt died
the next day.
morning. I remember that. Yeah.
I remember that too.
Man, I know you all are over it and processing through your humor, but it is so sad. It's so tragic.
He was 23 and had a heart attack.
Yeah. Bummer. Man. Do you all feel like some sort of honoring of him in staying together now and what you do? Do you feel like there's like an invisible cord that ties you together forever because of your origin story with him?
It does seem like it is like, again, I was, I guess, 22, I guess Berg and I probably were, or maybe Berg's 21. It was like a very formative thing. I can speak at least from my life. Like it was like the first, actually really big, really unexpected loss, And I remember having a conversation, the three of us, a couple months after that happened. Being like, because my first instinct was like, I'm moving back to the East Coast. Was being like, well, I don't think he would want us just to not do this anymore. So let's keep doing shows and keep doing that. And it is something where still obviously something like that you still think about quite a bunch. And the way I think about it is less like, hey, we're doing this like to honor him, but more being like, oh, I do think about well, what would be different? Because I was like, we'd be doing stuff with him, and that is crazy and weird to think about in that way. Because normally you're like, I don't improvise with this person anymore. And it's normally because they went back to their job as a lawyer. But in this case, it's something that is formative in my head. And I think early on in our careers too was something that I definitely kind of personally used to be like, oh, Matt was trying to be a screenwriter. He was trying to do this, and I'm going to try to do these things too because he could.
Right. Yeah. Was that not your normal trajectory? Your former trajectory? Were you going to do other stuff as a career? I guess that's for all three of you, but Fernie first.
Until Matt convinced us, Berg and I, to move out, I was like, yeah, I'll move to New York and I will go to grad school and I will keep studying history. And then he convinced me to come out here. And then out here, I was like, oh, maybe I'll be an actor or something. It took me several years to be I can do exactly one thing. That is not where I go. But I think Matt, I won't speak for Todd or Berg, but Matt kind of was like, hey, you should write. I remember him being like, write a screenplay. It's fine if it sucks shit. Or just write sketches, just write stuff. And then you can do that. And you can make that and you can do whatever. You can do shows or whatever, but definitely write. And it wasn't that I was I'm not going to be a writer, but I just hadn't really thought about it. And then that started me doing that and started Berg and I doing our 2-man sketch stuff and that sort of thing. So he definitely kind of made me think about that as a possibility.
Yeah, it's wild to think of your sliding doors life where you're a history professor somewhere on the East Coast. It's just wild.
Absolutely.
Berg, what was your alt universe reality?
In my head, I was going to be on an academic trajectory. And what's funny is I had dropped out of college at one point, and the night I dropped out, which was calmly handled. Well thought out, not spur of the moment, not traumatic. But I called Matt because I think we were supposed to get together to make flyers for our short form troupe or something. And I wasn't there. I missed rehearsal or something. And I called Matt and he was like, dude, come back to school, major in psychology. And then after school, come do comedy stuff. And I was like, okay. And then I came back to school and I really fucking loved psychology and cog sci. And so I like got it in my head. I was like, okay, great. I'll be an academic in this way instead. And Matt was like, no, you hate writing papers. You complain about it all the time. That's not going to be your life. Just fucking come out to LA. And it was like, oh yeah, I guess I should. But, you know, in terms of like what I would do when I got here, like beyond comedy as a loose concept, I didn't, you know, I remember thinking at one point that Fernie had it much more thought out than I did, where he was like, well, yeah, and you act and then you write and then there's all this stuff. And I was like, oh, you know, I really had no idea.
Yeah, wild. Todd, what was your path?
Mine is a little different because, like, when I was younger, I'd wanted to, like, act and stuff, but I was like, I shouldn't do that after college, and I had initially wanted to work in the music industry, so when I moved out here, like, a year into being out here, I got a job working for a company that managed record producers, and I was just doing the improv stuff on the side just because it was fun. I liked doing it. I was doing it with my friends from college and stuff. And it really wasn't until I actually started doing stuff at UCB, I think around 2007 maybe, when I was kind of like, oh, I wasn't like loving being in the music industry. And also I was kind of like, oh, if I don't try to do the acting and writing thing, I'm going to regret that I never tried it. So then like my boss was like letting me go on commercial auditions. And then it was shortly after that like we sold our pilot to Comedy Central, which is when I quit my job.
Got it. Let's talk about that. What was the pilot? How did it come about? What's the short version?
We were phenomenally lucky beneficiaries of the '08 writers' strike. Right? Like, I think that's kind of how it worked. Tom Lennon and Ben Garant couldn't write anything because they were striking. And
viewers listeners will know them as members of the sketch show The State, if you're my generation, or later Reno 911.
Yep.
Hot American Summer.
And writers of A Night at the Museum.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Great movie. Okay. So, but how did they know you all, or how were they aware of you?
Based
Tom's wife,
Jenny
right?
Lennon. Yeah, who's Tom's wife, was in a Will McLaughlin improv class with Deborah Tarika, my now wife. And
name
Will
drop?
McLaughlin was like a name drop, Deborah Tarika. And instant Deborah. And Will was like, go see Cage Match, which he was hosting at that time. He's like, Convoy's doing it, they're really good. And so Deb kind of like organized the class to all come see it, and they started coming every week, and Jenny started coming, and then the strike happened, and so Jenny started bringing Tom, and then Tom brought Ben. And they liked us and they got to know us, and we were like, oh, the real 911 guys. And they had nothing to do, so they're like, well, we should do something. And we're like, yes. And then like, well, we'll introduce you to our managers, and then we'll try to think of a pilot to do. And like the speed at which it happened was mind-boggling and warped my perspective of the industry for a number of years afterwards.
Yes. Took me a long time to realize, like, oh, that was really abnormal.
What was the timeline?
I feel like I remember I think we all kind of quit our day jobs around like March or April. And then I think by September, we were told we had shot the pilot, edited it, and we're told it was not being picked up.
Yes.
But the fast part was like, I think we had met with Ben and Tom's managers in January or February, and then over the course of a month came up with the pilot and pitched it and sold it. There was no real lead up. It was just sort of being like, well, what about this? What about this? We'll do something like this. Okay, great. Yeah, we like that. Emailing back and forth, went into Comedy Central and sold it.
Oh my God.
Immediately.
Although we should also say that I think one thing that helped, I think Ben and Tom might have sort of had as part of a deal with Comedy Central that they could kind of make a pilot. So I think that might have helped us out.
Yeah, it definitely did. It definitely did. Yeah. And they still had Reno on the air, so it was like these were the people who had like a show that did well for the network coming in with us. So like there was a lot of things going for us.
And Ben and Tom were signed on as producers on that.
Yeah. And Ben probably directed, or maybe they co-directed. I don't remember, but yeah, they were like EPs. Yeah.
This is the one I've seen this pilot. It's like the three of you are down in Mexico as world traveler. It's like
Bear Grylls, at the time Survivor Man and those shows were really big. So it was basically Reno 911, but those like man versus nature Survivor Man shows, which is honestly, I still think such an easy.
It's great.
Idea.
And
anytime I see the junior exec that worked on the show at Comedy Central is like, I still think we could make Most Deadliest Show.
Yeah.
Probably not with the three of us, but we would help work on it, and we would occasionally pop up in it.
Great title too, Most Deadliest Show. What did they give you a reason for not greenlighting it?
It was too expensive, right? Like that.
It was too
part
expensive.
Of it.
It wasn't that expensive. But then the other thing was it wasn't sexy enough. That era of Comedy Central was things like Secret Girlfriend and even shows that weren't sexual in nature were like Crod Man Dune, which they had just dumped a ton of money on. And it was like, we're going on a mythical adventure. And also, all these women aren't wearing clothes.
In our pilot class was like the other pilots they were considering at the time was Secret Girlfriend, which was the one that they picked up, but also Kanye West's puppet pilot was up with us
because we alligator boots.
Yeah, and so like it was a little bit they didn't pick us up, but also they didn't pick Kanye West up. So it's like, okay.
And in every way we are very similar to Kanye West. In every way.
And had a similar problem. His puppets weren't sexy enough. And if you don't want to fuck a puppet, they were more sexy
than you think. They were very sexy puppets.
He did have Kim Kardashian in the Princess Leia slave outfit in his pilot too.
That's how they met.
Yeah.
That's how they met.
Well, I think he probably cast her because he was interested.
Yes, but I mean, I think that's their origin story. Is alligator boots.
And I think Jordan Peele wrote on that because he wrote
the I Have a Dream sketch. It's the best sketch in that show. It's so good.
I gotta get a hold of this. I gotta watch this.
I might have a copy somewhere, Susie. If you remind me, I can hunt it down. If you have a DVD player as well,
I will buy a DVD player and then text you. Was that a discouraging rug pull to work on that so hard and then have it go away? Or
honestly, for me, no, because it was unfathomable. That we got to make
fast.
It with and with people that we admired that had like made stuff we like. We went to Mexico for free and got to ride jet skis and film on
we blew up a Jeep.
Yeah, it was so fucking cool, man. Like that we got to do this thing, and we're 20. We're in our 20s. We've been doing these shows for in black box theaters. Like I had done like a commercial to like little things would come up. We're doing dinner theater for a while. And then to be able to do this thing that was like not only like real, but also was like us, like, and I think like a good chunk of our sense of humor, like even it not going, it was a bummer, but it didn't feel discouraging. It felt like, hey, we could actually do this,
right? Because
that was close, and what they wanted wasn't us. Like if they want things for 14-year-olds to jerk off to while laughing, which sounds bad to me, but hey, then we aren't that. Like that was, that makes sense.
Not all of us are that.
Not all of us are that. Yeah.
Not all of us are that, but some of us are that, and that's how we want to be thought of.
And congratulations on that, Berg. We're very happy for you.
Thank you.
Not everyone knows themselves like that, No. I love that perspective, and that makes sense. It's like if it's not like you had been grinding for decades trying to get something made, and suddenly you had your shot and it vanished. It's like this came out of nowhere, and compared to dinner theater and black box shows, it's incredible. And it would infuse you with this new belief in yourself. Like, all right, we're better than we thought, or we have more of a shot than we thought. Have you used that sailwind to write more scripts or to make more of a go at that side, or are you all kind of doing individual stuff now?
For a long time, we did. We had a pilot at Amazon, we had a pilot at FX, we had a pilot at AMC, and then the soul crushing one was the AMC pilot.
AMC was brutal.
It was really soul crushing. It was a pilot with it. They wanted to get into half-hour comedies. And I was just telling the story. It was like something that we really believed in, and it was like going to be the three of us, and it was called Low Rent. and they were like low rent criminals who get in over their head, and we really liked it, and the execs were all on board, and they're giving us good notes, and it was like, this is going to happen, and this is like, we had to fail all those other times to get good enough to be able to do this show. And it was moving along, and like it was like very much as close as you get to like we're at least going to make this pilot. Maybe we'll shoot the pilot; it'll be bad, but you know what? Like we're going. This is a real shot.
Yeah, it's like a comedic Breaking Bad or something.
It was exactly that.
Yes, Breaking Bad was on the air, and our pitch was like, "What if the show's main characters were Badger and Skinny Pete? That's the show."
Perfect.
And then the whoever was in charge, not someone we ever met at AMC, our executives were all on board for it. Just decided, you know what, we're not going to do any comedies, and just killed any comedy that they had. And like we worked on it for over a year, and that one was heartbreaking because there was nothing we could have done. We couldn't have been better.
The only thing we could have done is decided to go with another place that wanted to buy it.
But that was so crushing because it was like, oh, we had no choice. There was no level that we could have done to make that happen. And that was really, really tough to navigate because that was like, oh, well, then what the fuck? You know, like, what's the point?
Can't you take that show then and pitch it to other places? I don't know how that part of the business works.
We kind of did, and you kind of can, but it's without famous people, that's incredibly hard to do because that network then has to pay their enemy a bunch of money to get it. You know, like you have to buy that from them, and you have to. Now it's just they're like, well, they said no. What do they know that I don't know? And everyone who's so fear-based don't want to do that. Like if it was a very famous person was in it, that sometimes overcomes it. But so like we kind of tried, but it was just not going to happen. So it was very frustrating.
This is one of the most depressing things about the industry, and I've been hearing more and more tales like this where brilliant people that I know write what's no doubt an amazing script, and I've talked to people recently who've had this with screenplays as well, work forever on like such a cool movie or such a cool show. It gets like bought and then killed, or like optioned and killed, or whatever, looked at, and then but it ends up in a graveyard where no one is allowed to produce it. And what an absolute waste. Like, think of all the great ideas that are just sitting in a graveyard somewhere.
It's such a and it's because they're all afraid of being the person who said no to the next loss, so they don't want anyone else to make it. If they say no and then you go and make it and have a hit, then they get fired, and they're all afraid of it.
Is that really the reason?
Big part of it,
Not
for sure.
For other people turn this, not necessarily for our thing, but
in general, it's like you don't want to be the asshole that said like Star Wars will never be a thing, and then it is, and then you look like the asshole.
Yeah, because then you look like the asshole.
Yeah. Wow. Well, shoot, their ego strikes again. Man. So, Fernie, you now are currently directing an improvised pilot. Are we allowed to talk about that?
Yeah, I think so. They announced it. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about that briefly and what that process is like?
Yeah, this is actually a thing that we shot a version of this pilot last year in January of 2023 for CBS. And it was created by Marta Kaufman and Hannah Cantor and June Raphael, who used to be on the Sentimental Lady with us, and Paul Shearer in it. And then CBS didn't go with it, and then we went to the strike, and now we're making it for Amazon and Freebie. So it actually is one where they were able to sell it somewhere else. And it's like it's a multicam setup with that's improvised. So we have an outline, and kind of like in Reno 911 or Curb or The League, the outline says this is kind of the story beat that happens in that scene, and then everything else is improvised, but with the added element of we have a live audience. So the show starts with talking to the audience, getting stories from them, and finding ways to use that kind of throughout the show, which is like it kind of shocks me. It's never been done before. I think one of the only reasons it's really getting done is the strength of like June and Paul and Marta being able to be like, hey, we trust these people. They have successes under their belts.
Marta Kaufman, who is one of the creators of Friends, just for
Thank you.
It's very it's like a dream job because it's also combining a lot of my interests. We've been trying to do something improvised forever. We had an animated Amazon pilot that was improvised and stuff. Like there's so much. There's a lot you can do with improv on camera that isn't just, hey, we filmed a black box, but it just doesn't really get done.
Right.
Which is a bummer.
Early on when we were like talking about ideas to do with Ben and Tom, I think they were pitching us on doing some sort of like cage match live show where we were going to go like city to city.
And we were like, no one wants to see that. That'll be bad. We don't want to do this.
Yeah. Trust me, it won't translate.
Todd and Berg, are you working on anything script-wise or have your sights on a future project, or are you solely improv for comedy right now?
Solely improv for comedy right now, yeah.
Yeah, me too. I really, during the pandemic, Fernie and I started the pandemic with a bunch of pitches lined up for right around St. Patty's Day 2020. We had a
early
bunch
March,
of pitches.
2 weeks. Yeah. So many pitches.
So many pitches that we had like 6 pitches lined up. And wouldn't you know it, Suze, they got bumped.
Oh, no.
When we wound up being many people's like first like Zoom pitch, and like that was frustrating, not because of anyone involved, just because, my God, fuck the timing of and fuck COVID for 1,000 other reasons. But
I will say it feels very good to start any pitch where you want to impress people by watching them struggle for 20 minutes to figure out how to work Zoom.
Yeah, it was before Zoom.
Pitch,
it was all those like Microsoft like proprietary
and people are like just moving their mouths but no sound coming out, being like, can't hear you. And then so you'd start late, and then they'd be like, okay, well, we only have 10 minutes now, and be like, okay, let's speed run here. You know what? We didn't sell it.
Yeah, we didn't sell it.
Well, so I'm going to go ahead and blame Matt for that one too.
Yeah,
that was Matt's fault.
Yeah. But like, so that didn't go, and then during pandemic, I like put a lot of time into developing a show based on Greek mythology, and then like when I was halfway through like the pitch, Dan Harmon announced Krapopolis, and I was like, motherfucker. And then I had like another show, like a Moby Dick themed show I was working on, and it took me like 3 months to get like the least helpful response ever out of my manager. And that broke me. I was like, I can't even get the guy who's supposed to get my foot in the door to like read my script and email me back. And it was like, maybe I'll come back to it at some point. But right now, like, I'm good performing. It makes me so happy. It doesn't have the same sort of existential stress and dread as attaching all my finances and self-worth to it. And like, if an actual job came up, I'd probably take it. But like, I can't spend 24 hours a day being like, I should be researching, I should be writing, I should be coming up with something, I should be developing it. It drained me. Pandemic broke me of it. So now I just do improv for comedy.
Do you still, and this can be a question for everybody, but do you still love improv and get as much out of it now as you ever did before?
I think I get more out of it now, honestly, because like I think for a long time, and I don't think I was doing this consciously, but I think for a long time, certainly improv had been a huge springboard for the three of us, for our careers. And you saw the same thing happening for everyone else. And I didn't consciously put it together until way after the fact, but it made it less immediate. It made it like, yeah, I'm doing the show right now, but if I do a really good show, then maybe I'll, I don't know, get a fucking pilot audition or something like that. And now when I do a show, it's like, no, I'm doing the show because I love doing the show. That's all there is to it. It's like much purer in a weird way. It reminds me of doing it when I was younger, and I love it. It makes me so happy.
Yeah. Same answer, Fernie and Todd?
Yeah, I say for like, it keeps like all throughout, it keeps me sane, because it is something that you can do. And it's pure creation, which sounds pretentious, artsy-fartsy, but it is like where you get to go on stage. And it's like, so if we do a Convoy show, you get a Convoy show, and you get what the three of us find funny, both individually and collectively, and that's what that is. And no one can say no to that. And there's no watering down of that. And for better or worse, we get to do that, and we get to create something that like I'm certainly proud of. And like that is a huge like release. Like you can take things seriously, because we do take it seriously, right? Like I'm not, I think any of the three of us are big like let's just do a fuck around show where it doesn't matter. Not really our vibe, but like you can take it seriously and also still have it be joyful. And it's much harder to maintain that joyfulness in other elements of the industry or comedy or stuff, but that joy is still there. And the joy of A, doing a great show, then B, like at our show, seeing someone I don't know kill it, or have a guest team come and just like make me laugh incredibly hard, that doesn't really go away. I'm not like a jaded being like, fuck, they're 24, they can't be funny. I'm like, holy shit, that's so amazing. Like,
Yeah.
like that makes me feel like alive and not like old and decrepit.
Yeah.
And what about you, Todd? Are you still at the same joy level with improv?
I think for me also, I think in a lot of ways it's always been that, like, this is a little bit sort of what Fernie was saying, but like you get to make something, you know, and I think like, especially during the times when like, you know, we were writing pilots, or even when I wasn't writing with them or writing on my own, I was still like making something every week, and it's instant. It's not even like a sketch show where you're working on it forever, or working on a pilot that might not ever get aired or even produced or whatever. Like, this is something like it's created, people get to see it, and we get to put it out there. I think the other thing that I really like about it too, that I've sort of been thinking about, is like, I really like collaborating, and that's, I think, one reason why I really love improv versus like stand up or even like writing. Like, I hate writing by myself. It's so much more fun to be like writing with people, and I think that comes from like improv and that sense of like collaboration and creating together, not creating on your own.
Yeah. I hear that big time. Stand-up seems like it would be a lonely art form compared to this. Yeah.
One other thing, when Fernie was talking about like us taking it seriously, like I guess this plays into like a little bit of our origin or whatever, but like we rehearsed regularly for 5-6 years or something like that.
I think longer than that.
I think longer than that. I think, honestly, it might have been like 10 years. Like, I think it wasn't until I started Funny or Die, when I worked at Funny or Die, that I was like, I am so burnt out, I can't do this every week.
And we would rehearse weekly and do a show. We never had a coach, but we would always film our shows and then watch them and kind of like talk about them, and then just like do a Convoy show in Berg and Fernie's shitty apartment, basically, for no one.
Yeah.
That's
Part of
fascinating.
rehearsal was trying to get Todd to put his hands in the fan.
Yes, that was definitely a big
a lot of like trying to do
a lot of
that.
being like, yeah, let's all wave our hands. Just
Let's raise the roof.
Yeah.
What sorts of things were you clocking in that footage watching session and were you able to correct for that without having eyes on the outside?
Yeah, I think we were like, it would be a lot of stuff like, oh, you know what? We would find go-tos that we'd be like, this is stuff that we're using.
No Blade Runner, no prospectors.
Yeah, we would have to like ban prospector characters. We really loved that for a while.
All of us equally. We just keep playing prospectors.
Berg, that's not true. Nope.
Equally.
Berg, that's absolutely not true.
I think watching it also helped us build like a vocabulary for what it was.
Yes.
Like, in terms of like earlier when we were talking about like finding the form, I think a lot of why we were able to do that was because we were watching it like for a while. And we'd still talk about this, like when we'd watch a show, one thing we'd talk about of like, oh, we didn't find a world that we played around in. And that was like a big thing we would talk about a lot when we were rehearsing, that idea of like finding a world, basically.
And it would help us kind of like, I think it prepared us actually too, because we do this before UCB, and it kind of prepared us for like way UCB works, of being like, we would watch, and like Todd mentioned before, these bridge scenes that we figured out, oh, if we would really blow out a game and then we need to get to another game, we would instinctively kind of go and do this scene where it's like, okay, this guy just goes home and he's talking to his roommate now. I don't have much of an idea. I'm just going to put him at home and then we'll find a new game there. And it wasn't like we had some big thought about that, but in watching it, we started to go, oh, these scenes serve a purpose. And we were able to like Todd was just saying, like name what that was. Hey, this is a bridge scene. And then we would be able to go like, okay, now I can consciously go, you know what? That scene is killing. I'm not going to be able to top it. I need to give us a bridge scene after this to get to the next scene. And it made it concrete in a way that a lot of times, in my experience, improv classes or coaching cannot be, where it can still be so abstract and like, hey, like, you know, like not something you can really grab onto, but we would go, I'm watching ourselves, I'm seeing what we're doing, and I'm seeing what works. And I can kind of find that as a tool that now I can put in my toolbox and do it purposefully instead of purely instinctively.
I think that's also because we were almost doing like form work rather than improv work. Because in class, it's like, you didn't find the game, you've got to justify. Yeah. And we were like, no, this is like, I think we instinctively had good enough instincts in a lot of ways with that stuff. So we were like, it was kind of like nuts and bolts almost.
Yeah.
Something that was interesting too is like, you know, in comparison to being on a Herald team where like, you know, you do the show, you get notes right after the show, is, you know, we'd have these tapes and we'd watch them like, you know, 4 or 5 days later, like you're removed enough from whatever your mindset was when you were making those choices, that you could view yourself a little bit more objectively. And doing that weekly over the course of years kind of turned that into like a sort of like internal, like kind of objective lens. And so then like at some point I remember starting to feel myself in and I was very in my head for a while, but like you could feel yourself in a scene being like, oh no, you're doing the thing, try doing the other thing. And then at some point that just kind of becomes reflexive and it gets a lot easier. But I don't know if I would have gotten to a point where I had those reflexes as quickly as I would have if we hadn't been watching the tapes every week and really kind of like treating it academically.
That's
Can
so
I tell
interesting.
a quick story about that backfiring?
Yeah.
When we were doing
please.
I think it was doing Cage Match, and we had like a couple that we weren't that psyched about. Berg knows where it's going already. And Berg and Todd pretty much always start the shows, and I'm the first person tagging. And the first scenes were like, they weren't clicking. There was something that was wrong. We realized like, oh, a bunch of these are like starting with questions, which is like kind of like a rookie thing. We can find our way around it, but like having it specifically be the first line of the scene was like hampering us and slowing us down. So it was taking too long to rev the engine. So we're like, okay, in this show, we're not going to start in a question. That's kind of our thing here. No way to start a question. We get the suggestion. Who knows?
It was like, let's start with a you statement.
Yes.
So that
yes,
it's
to make
that
it
we're
about the other
making it
person.
about the other person. Yes.
And that connect us and do that like that. Okay, great.
Great.
And
note.
so the scene starts. It's good effort. The scene starts. Berg walks forward, looks at Todd, and goes, "You gonna finish that sandwich?" And instantly, I could see on his face he knew what he had done. And the scene was.
He did say
I don't
it
mind
was a you
saying
statement.
bad.
It was a you statement. Yeah, it was not a good
was-
scene, but it was a you statement.
It was like he was spitefully pushing back against something that all three of us had agreed on, as if someone was forcing him to do this. And he's like, "I can show you." And I think about it all the time. About
so
that.
funny.
Oh, great. And it was such a funny. It's like, good note. We figured it out. But you have to get through this element of like, it's in my head in the wrong way. And then I
Yes.
have to like get to the other side of that for it to be useful.
That's such an interesting this taping and watching yourselves and coming up with your own adjustments and notes would not work for everybody. But it's interesting that it worked for you all. Like if I imagine like watching myself every week and then being self-conscious about every move I'm making on stage, I think I would crumble. But it does make sense also. Yeah, and I'm fascinated by these like rules that you came up with for yourselves. Like, do you still adhere to the Todd and Berg start and Fernie tags in?
It's usually just because Fernie's getting the suggestion, so then Berg and I end up
gotcha.
starting.
That kind of came from I was the best at getting suggestions, and it felt weird to go right from the suggestion into the scene, so I would fade back. Like if Berg gets a suggestion, they'll say like Jupiter, and he'll go sofa. Heard you, no problem. They'll be like no, and then you roll on with that. But like
also, my hearing is legendarily bad, and that is a big part of why I can't get the suggestions. Because then I ask people to repeat, but then I seem angry. I'm like, what? And that's a bad vibe. Last night at our show, I showed up late. That's its whole own fucking kettle of fish.
Berg forgot the show was
I
happening.
forgot the show's happening.
Oh,
and
dear.
then, but I show up, and during the show, Fernie leans over to me and goes, "The next team is called Justin's Best Friends." And I couldn't hear what the fuck he said, so I just went, "What?"
he didn't even do that. It was like I whispered. It was so hard to whisper, and he goes, "What?" Like as if he had some like big response, and it was just the word "what," and I couldn't breathe. I was laughing so hard.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
I think one
go
thing
ahead,
also
Todd.
going just with the taping thing, I think a lot of groups also, it would be hard because like I think because we knew each other and we had that foundation of college, and even being in our college improv group where we would kind of like note each other or talk about stuff that we were comfortable noting each other, and we weren't going to get like hurt or egos weren't going to come into play. So I think that was another thing. Like I think other groups might not have that level of, you need a certain
we
level
never
of
really
trust.
fought about that. Like I think a lot of groups would get like into snits, and like if we disagreed with something, it would be the most like academic, like getting deep into theory stuff, but like it never really became a thing.
I'm positive there were a handful of times where I got.
I'm trying to think of one. I was like,
and
I bet I
also
can
a
come
lot
up
of this
with
was
one.
like pre-game, so we didn't have like a theory in some ways behind what we were doing. It was like us kind of like grasping for our own language in certain ways too.
Yeah. Talk to me about how game entered your sphere of consciousness. You all went to UCB. Is that was your first exposure to the idea of the game of the scene? And
the first time I heard about it was Matt, before he died, obviously, took a workshop with Besser at I.O., I think for like I.O.'s improv festival, and it must have been like summer of 2004. And I remember Matt saying like, yeah, Besser's whole thing is like game. And I didn't first understand what he meant. I thought it was like short form games and stuff. So that was like the first like inkling of this idea of like game that I'd sort of heard about.
They'd mentioned it at I.O., but it was kind of talked about as like a game of the scene might pop up, but don't really worry about that. Don't pursue it. And then for me, when UCB opened up and I started learning about it, that really was there were a couple times doing Heralds at I.O. where I had accidentally stumbled into like a game-based second beat scene, and they felt easy. I didn't know how to label them. I didn't know how to pick them out from the other stuff. I just kind of knew they felt easier. They made more sense to my brain than the other stuff we were doing on that team. And then being at UCB, it was like, oh shit, someone's articulating this like kind of like, I don't know, this kind of like affinity I had for this type of scene. And now they're telling me how to steer towards it and how to use it. And that was like really exciting. That was my 201.
That was my exact experience where it's like, man, accidentally, sometimes I do a scene that's so fun and it goes well. And then other times I don't. I wish there was a hack and then there was, and there's a whole curriculum. Yeah. Fernie, was your experience similar, that UCB was your first exposure?
Yeah, it was my first exposure. And I remember for me, part of like what really clicked for me was realizing like, oh, this is helping me understand, like when I watch people on stage, what they find funny. Whereas at I.O., I would see a bunch of shows and like there were like spectacular teams like Besser, Risky, or Quartet or whatever that like I just fucking loved. But then there were like a lot of other teams where I'm like, I don't know if that person is enjoying what they're doing, right? Like I don't even know what they find funny about this, and then I'm certainly not laughing. And then this idea of game came, when it was presented to me, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense to me. That's just kind of like, calling your shot of being like, hey, I think this is funny. Let's do this some more, and then collaborating on an idea together. And for whatever reason, that's how my brain works. I understood that. That made it go. Yeah. I understand this sort of collaboration on we're all rallying around one thing and seeing where it can go in a way that before that I maybe hadn't. And I think it helped us, the three of us, because it like before that we were calling them worlds, but we were absolutely doing it.
I think we were intuitively playing game, especially because we were doing tags, which like usually tags you're following game, and we never had to deal with second beats in Convoy. But I think we got it intuitively without having the language for it, which I think like a lot of good improvisers everywhere, before they get game, if they're doing well, they're understanding that, or it's in here.
Yeah, it's the heartbeat of comedy, and we grew up watching game without realizing that's what it is, and and your Convoy shows, the tags of them basically are just one long beat the hell out of the game. It's like you follow one game for a little while, then you find a new interesting thing, follow that person or that thing.
We went to Edmonton years ago for an improv festival, and I'm blanking on this dude's name, but they were all very short form, and it was like a very specific kind of like comedy sports that I never really understood. But one night we did like our regular thing, and there was a guy there who had taken like a 201 course in LA or New York or something, and I remember him coming up to us after the show and leaning in and going like, beat the hell out of the game. And we were like, yes, that's it.
You caught us.
Yeah.
Busted.
Yeah, it was very, very endearing. Yeah, it was funny.
Do you all have sort of individual superpowers on Convoy? Like you named Berg as a rhyming guy. I know you could definitely lob him that
and
softball.
Prospector.
And Prospector. I was just talking about this the other day, or we were talking about this on a text thread, that Berg at Sentimental Lady practice one time got banned from playing Prospectors by our coach, Julie Brister.
Yeah.
Berg, you play a lot of old-timey Prospectors. I think you should stop doing that for a while and challenge yourself to find some other characters.
Probably Berg was like, I'm banned doing it at Convoy. I got to do it over at Sentimental Lady. It's my outlet.
Yeah.
Let Berg cook.
Right. Don't take Tigger's bounce away. Do you all name some things that you know you can serve up the other guy that you know they will be able to spike the ball on?
Well, one thing I think that like actually all three of us do, and I think it is like a little bit of like that, like the trick behind the card trick, is that all three of us, when called out on something, make it like the fundamental thing of that person. So like if Todd, misspeaks or does something that is like not what was intended, then and we jump on it, the resistance isn't there to be like, hold on, well, let's go back to what I did. It's gonna be like, no, that weird thing is my whole deal now. Like I can remember this was a while ago, but I remember Berg was trying to initiate this scene based off the scene before. And it was something being like, okay, before we get to who like washed the most clothes in this laundromat last year, I want to talk about this other thing. And it was whatever was relevant. And Berg clearly initiated that just as a throwaway. And both Todd and Nancy were like, no, who washed the most clothes? And you don't have to worry about Berg being like, I really want to say my thing. He's like, nope, now the bit is this guy will never say the clothes thing. And everyone's going to hate him for that. And like knowing that each one of us is always going to grab that thing and then like that's now my deal makes it incredibly easy to initiate or to play off of them.
Do you each, any of you have a favorite type of character to play? Berg, no Prospectors, but is there like an archetype that you just get thrilled about being turned into?
I don't do it that much, but my favorite character to play is someone who is like just like so sad and knows it and is unabashed about it. Like that's my favorite thing. It's the funniest comedic type, I think. Just someone who's being like, yeah,
Charlie Brown.
Fuck yeah, shit is just bad, man. Like, oh boy, like, and just is just this like sad person. I'll grab that whenever the opportunity arises.
That's so funny. Someone once quoted you to me, Fernie. So I was teaching someone who had you as a teacher, and now I use this phrase from you, and I credit you. But when you said in a tag run, you should try to Charlie Brown someone. Like if something goes poorly in their day, have fun piling on and Charlie Browning them and heightening the. Yeah, but I love that verb, Charlie Browning.
Yeah. Pull that football away. Yeah.
Berg, do you have a favorite of all of your 1,000 characters?
Oh, there's so many to choose from. I mean, I think the things that the two that come to mind immediately, and they're both ones that have to be used pretty sparingly because they really stand out, and like maybe when you're doing a show every week, you can get away with doing these like twice a month, but like one is like erudite fop, like someone who speaks like in a very, like a very Baroque sort of manner of speaking and has very specific opinions about everything that's going on, because it's just anything that person says, whether they're the voice of reason in the scene or like a chaos agent, like it just the way, just saying things in like a kind of Dickensian prose. Just everything sounds stupider. And then, but again, like that kind of stands out against the background noise of an improv show. So you got to use it pretty sparingly. And then the other one, which also stands out against the noise of a background of an improv show, is like like I would say like a grotesque abomination who's really trying not to freak everyone out. Like,
like the meat monster.
Yes,
in the pilot.
Exactly, the meat monster. Yeah. Exactly, the meat monster. Like I love a meat monster character.
Fill our audience in on the meat monster.
The meat monster. I bet you can put it together.
think like Pizza the Hut.
Got it.
Yeah, the meat monster was a character from our Amazon animated pilot that had been improvised in a sound booth. To thunderous silence from everyone watching. and I don't remember exactly how the meat monster formed. I think he was part of like a radioactive dolphin that was in a tuna can or something like that. But then he was just a high school student, and like, so we just followed this meat monster, like giving like presentations in history class. It was like, Abraham Lincoln was a critical president for our nation, you know, and just like, but then also just interrupting that with, kill me, please kill me, you know, like, so just, but that, just because like, I think with improv, one of the things that's so fun about it is, you know, you can just say, hey, picture a giant hulking meat thing. The audience will go with you, you know, like,
right.
Like you don't have to like build like a foam rubber suit. There's no CGI. You don't got to do mocap. You don't have to like run it by a team of execs who are like, yeah, but how do people relate to the meat monster? Why are you the one to tell the meat monster's story? You know, you're like, it's just a fucking meat monster. We're all thinking about how gross lunch meat is. We're just going to make a monster out of it, you know, like, but that type of character that would be difficult, if not impossible, to do in any other medium, I think is something that really brings me a lot of joy when the opportunity arises.
Berg has another pocket thing that I think mainly comes up in Convoy, which is a guy who is right, but Berg, the improviser, knows that the world will conspire to make him wrong. So he'll say something about whales, and it will be on Todd and I to just come at that from the stupidest perspective possible. But because it's improv, Berg, the man, knows that we can make it like that true, that whales are fish, because it's improv. So like in this world, whales can, and if Berg's not careful, we will go to a scene where it's like, yes, whales are fish now. And that is like a very strong Berg character of a guy trying to educate the most confident idiots in the world, but also doesn't have the status to do it. Like that's like such a pocket character.
He's being the Copernicus of whales of his time. Yeah. Like, no, it's this way.
And Todd is very good at playing traumatized children. Have you noticed that, Todd? You play a lot of traumatized children.
Yeah, I'm working through some stuff, I guess.
It's so much cheaper than therapy. Yeah. Keep at it. And we'll do one last one. What advice would you have for improvisers who are trying to get better? Not just general like practice more, but like approaches for scenes or personal ways that you see improv or that changed your gameplay or the way that you play. What's a nugget you can give them?
I always feel like I might be stealing this now from Fernie or Berg, but like I always feel like start your own thing. I think too many people put so much weight, and I understand why, because of how the system is of like needing to be on a Herald team and that sort of thing. And I know we sort of came up in a little bit of a different environment through IO, but I think we always had Convoy. So no matter what was going on with Herald or whatever, like we always knew we had this thing that we created that we could take anywhere and do anything. So I think like if you can find those people that want to like dedicate yourselves to something, you can create your own thing. Like I even think of like is it Funk Shuffle, like Dennis Kurlich's group, like that's another group that like they started their own thing, and like they have that. And I think some of them I think haven't even been on like Herald teams at UCB, but they've got that thing that they do, and I think that's a good example of doing that.
Yeah, that's great advice.
You know, I think, like, to me, and, like, if anyone's taking class with me in the last, like, 5 years, they've heard me talk about this ad nauseum, but, like, game is just what you find funny, and there's no right game, right? Like, and sometimes people approach it, and that's what scares them about it, is that, like, oh, you have to play the game, and that find the game, and that makes it sound like it exists when we're just making believe on stage. And the better you get at just going, you know what I find funny is this, and that's what we're going to do in this scene. The better you'll, as long as you're also listening to your scene partner, the better you'll do. Like a group of people trying to do that and listening when their scene partner does that, that will work. It will work 9 times out of 10. And almost everything that trips people up is them, like those boring long form shows we were joking about in the beginning. That's nobody doing that. They're going like, this is a scene about a bad doctor. And then if you were to stop them and go, do you find that funny? Just a doctor who's bad at being a doctor? They would go, no. But you can do funny scenes about bad doctors. It just has to be more specific, and that specificity comes almost exclusively from what you find funny. So if you tap into that, then you'll be okay.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Fernie. Berg, good luck.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's follow your instinct. And for the record,
That sounds like what Fernie just said.
Yeah.
It's
You gonna tell people to start their own thing too?
Yeah. But I think what happens is, at least for me, is when you're learning something new, there's a really there's an attempt to be articulate about it and think rigorously about it. And so many improv students watch improv 7 nights a week. They listen to improv podcasts constantly. They're in rehearsals 3 times a week, and that's all great. But then they'll go watch someone like, Jason Mantzoukas do a show, and he won't be doing anything that they can really like kind of break down into like these little like categories we put on things after the fact, the labels. And it leads people to doubt their instinct. They think like, well, I learned all this stuff and that doesn't fit with what Shitty Jobs is doing or whatever. I must be wrong. And it's like, no. They're just following their instinct. Like when you watch like a really strong improviser, they're acting on instinct. Like that's not to say that there's not training and rigor and all that stuff that informs the instinct. But in the moment on stage, you just need to react. Like you can't have a head full of fucking theory. It's going to get in the way. Like think about it after the show, but when you're in the moment, just fucking react.
Yeah. All great advice. Albeit Berg is basically a plagiarist, but
I am. Yeah.
Anything anybody would like to plug?
You can come see us the 3rd Sunday of every month at the Yard Theater. It's us, and we always have 2 guest teams at 9 p.m. You can we're on Eventbrite or follow us on Twitter, and it's always a really fun show. So if you're in LA,
we have a mailing list that you can sign up for too, right. Which I think you can probably find the link by visiting our Twitter account
or just email
X account
convoyimprov@gmail.com, and we'll put you on.
Yeah,
great. Do you guys live stream ever? No.
Although there is I think there's a catalog of the Zoom shows that we did on Twitch during COVID. So
watching us slowly going insane. I think we don't live stream largely out of 100% laziness. It seems like
got it. You can say that. I can't say that, but you
and the yard's not.
It's true. You agree?
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, of course. No, I only ask because we have a big international audience and also people around the country who don't have the ability to come see you at the Yard, and it would be cool for them to see an example of what you do. But if they go to your Twitch channel, they can see some shitty COVID shows.
Like we're all in our little boxes going like, I can't get the sound to work.
Right.
There's probably some shows there might be like a show on YouTube that if you Google Convoy Improv you might find an old show.
Our Comedy Central show from 2009 is up there, the one with Brigadoon.
Oh, and also in June we're coming to the Orange County Improv Festival.
Oh, here we go. All right. That's a road trip.
So we've covered the whole world.
There you go. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you whenever our next show is. Next week?
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Bye. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Suze.
Bye.
If you have a question about improv that you would like me to ask a future guest, email it to yesalsopod@gmail.com, and I will get it on the show. If you're a fan of the show, follow us on Instagram @yesalsopod. And please help us out by liking, rating, reviewing, clicking, sending, talking, and blasting us to your improv communities. That will help us out a lot. If you're a theater who would like to host us for a live recording and improv show, let us know at yesalsopod@gmail.com. A huge shout out to Ryan Rosenberg, who produced this thing with his generous help and his unlimited knowledge about all things podcast. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week. No, we won't, Susie. That's not how podcasts work. They will see. They won't even see us. They will listen to us. So it's actually the opposite of both things you said. Thanks for listening, and you will listen to us next week. Maybe. We don't know.